We continue talking about this book on symbols by James N. Powell. And as I told you, I was just looking at the one on the I Ching, which is extremely good. And then they have this one here on Tiger. Now, that's a poem by William Blake. And as you know, William Blake was a fantastic illustrator of whatever he did. Plus, the meaning of his poems are quite interesting. And of course, his illustrations are fascinating as well. So when you go through this entire book, you will find many things in here that you don't expect to find. And it's quite fascinating what it means and how it comes. They've got all kinds of things. And now let me lead you a little bit about what it says. Symbols have a strange power over us. Useful for communication, symbols nevertheless place limits on how we think and even act. Now, then, how then can we overcome the limitations of symbols Western society has imposed on us? How can we discover new paths to clarity and enlightenment? In this case, cross-cultural studies, James Powell reveals in text and illustrations how people all over the world have attempted to emancipate their thoughts, citing Zen Buddhism, the Druids, T.S. Eliot, St. John of the Cross, sacred writings of India, China Seers, Hopi Indians, and other diverse examples. He shows how poetry, prayer, meditation, questions, and other techniques may be used to transcend the confines of the symbols imposed by one's particular culture. And that's what's particularly good about this book, because when he's in any one section, for example, this one is Kiva, and this one is a particular thing that he's talking about. And what he does in here, he doesn't just talk about what it means and show symbols of it, for example, but in the discussion, he will go beyond the culture that this represents. Now, these are Hopi Indians, for example, that he's talking about. But he goes beyond that to show how similar are some of these things with other cultures. And that's one thing that's fascinating about his work. And that is why I find this book particularly interesting, because it does things that you don't expect to find, and it's extremely clever and it's extremely useful, because I haven't seen any of the book quite as interesting as this, with its beautiful illustrations and going beyond the particular culture that you find it in. This is why this is particularly good, and I find it useful, helpful, and particularly entertaining in the fact that it gets you out of your cultural mind. Of course, there's no way to get beyond your cultural mind except by doing it and not just talking about it. The best one in here, according to mine, is MU, Mu. This is what you might call a Zen koan, and it is a Buddhist language and a Zen Buddhist talk and so forth. But this one here is one of the most famous koans you will ever read, and it is illustrated just the way it should be when you actually come to it. He talks about each of these pictures as they go through, and each of these pictures is a part of the koan which gets explained. This is probably one of the most fascinating of all. It's done beautifully, and it's done very well. This book is a tremendous idea manufacturer to get you out of your culture and into your mind.